So, the very famous Moonlight Sonata of Beethoven. First thing perhaps to mention about this piece is that the name Moonlight Sonata was never given to the piece by Beethoven. That came later by the poet Ludwig Rellstab. It's a very unusual sonata. If you know anything about sonata and sonata structure, a sonata is supposed to have a nice melody at the beginning. Something like this, a famous sonata of Mozart. This one, it's sort of hard to know, what is this at the beginning? Is this melody? Is it an accompaniment? It's just the same notes over and over again. It doesn't have the clear sort of melodic structure or general structure that a sonata does. That's just a typical, one of the many examples of how Beethoven was ahead of his time and really experimenting with forms and doing things a bit differently than everybody else. Let's talk first about the indication at the beginning here, this one that you see over the music. I won't try and pronounce it out of respect for any Italian students that I might have, but it's important to know what it means. It means to play the piece with the utmost delicacy and without dampers. In other words, without lifting the pedal. On a modern piano, essentially what he would be saying is keep the pedal down the entire time. On earlier pianos, you had to press the pedal up. It was actually a knee bar that you had to press up, so hence the without dampers indication. Anyway, let's talk about that for a minute. Of course, with the utmost delicacy, we can certainly use that. His indication to not lift the pedal at all during this piece doesn't work on a modern piano. It works on a forte piano, the sort of piano that Beethoven was playing on, because the notes are much less resonant. But on a modern piano, if you do that, you'll just have a complete wash of sound. I've heard people try it, but it doesn't work very well. So my suggestion would be to, as you normally would, change the pedal as the harmony changes, allowing for a certain amount of blur between the chords, but not too much. You can watch in my video the way I pedal it. I generally pedal it harmony by harmony. Now, in the right hand, when this sort of melody, if you can call it that, comes in, be sure that you emphasize it a little bit. Even though he writes pianissimo above it, we want to separate it from the accompaniment below. So we play now a bit like a bell, so that it sounds really, really beautiful up above that bottom line. Listen to the harmony in this piece. There are some beautiful places and beautiful dissonances where we need to show what's going on in the harmony. When I say listen to the harmony, I don't even mean that you need necessarily to be able to analyze what's going on. It's not important to me that you know this is an F sharp diminished seventh chord or whatever you might have, but it's very important to react to the sort of emotional qualities of the harmonies. I'll give you an example. When we get to this spot, listen to that harmony right there. It's a very, very dissonant harmony, and we want to bring that out. We want to show it. So that C is such a painful note, just pure suffering, and it resolves, and the resolution can be less. Again, suffering, and the left hand makes a crescendo, and then we come back down. Okay, so listen to the harmony. The more intensive ones can be a bit louder, and the resolutions less, like this one here. Let's talk about this middle section. Many people have some troubles with this middle section when we get into this stuff. Now, as for the fingering, you can simply watch my video and see what I do, but let's talk about how to find those notes. Here's where a bit of theory will come in very handy. If we look at this first measure, rather than understanding this as just sort of a random sequence of notes, there's a very clear pattern to it. This is what we call a diminished seventh chord. The distance between every one of those notes is 3 half steps. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. And Beethoven simply alternates between this note and this one and this one and this one and continues up that pattern. So take a look at the distance between those notes. It's very logical and part of this diminished chord. After that, same thing, and he's using the notes of a C sharp minor chord, which are C sharp, E, and G. If you know a bit of harmony, you can see that he's just alternating between notes of that chord. And again, a diminished chord, another diminished chord, very logical. And then he comes back down and does the same pattern in reverse. And so on. Another thing to talk about here, notice that he occasionally, in writing the triplets, creates a second voice up above or down below, which should be emphasized. One example is here. Those quarter notes, not only should they be held out, but anytime you see a second voice like that, the composer is trying to show that he wants that upper, or that second voice, the long notes, to be emphasized. Here also, you can really let the weight sink into these quarter notes, quarter and half note, keep it held down, and so on. When we get to the end of the piece, just notice in the left hand, anytime you have this rhythm in this piece actually, that the 16th note here comes after the last note of the triplet, so it looks like this. They don't come together, not like this, but slightly after in the left hand, because the 16th note, of course, is a quarter of a beat, and a triplet is a third of a beat, so they don't line up one to one. Those are the most important things to think about when playing this Moonlight Sonata. I would just add to that, really try to capture this character. It should be played delicately, and it's a very, very sad and tragic piece, and you want to do your best to bring that out. I want to make one quick addition as well regarding the tempo of the piece. What is the time signature here? Beethoven does not write 4/4 time. He writes a C with a line through it. That means alla breve, or cut time. That means we're thinking in terms of essentially 2 half notes per measure. 1 and 2 and. It's the same time signature that's used for marches, for example. It is generally speaking faster than 4/4 time. So we're not thinking 1, 2, 3, 4. We're thinking about 2 big beats in every measure. 1, 2, 1, 2, which suggests to me that many people tend to play this piece too slowly. You hear people play this. It takes forever, and it doesn't really reflect the time signature of this music. Beethoven writes adagio sostenuto, which means very slowly and sustained. But at the same time, this cut time means you have to be thinking in groups of 2 per measure. Okay, I hope you enjoy performing this beautiful, beautiful piece. I'll see you again next time.